Welcome back to SEO Stream 2023. We've got another amazing speaker lined up for you today. The next presentation, I know a lot of you are going to be excited for. It's going to be specifically covering what you should be expecting out of EEAT going forward from Google and all of the predictions that Ellie and her team at Digital Loft have made. So put it together for Ellie Wraith, ladies and gentlemen.
Wow, thanks so much for that introduction, Charles. Yeah, it's great to be here today at SEO Stream. Today I'm going to be talking about the predictions for the future of EEAT and how brands and businesses can outperform and outrank their competition in 2024 and beyond. So today I'm going to be looking at kind of a recap of the past and present of EEAT, predictions for what the future of EEAT is going to look like, and some actionable takeaways that you can use from today to help going forwards. I'm going to be inviting everybody to think beyond the here and now, to look towards what the future of search has in store for all of us, both as kind of individuals and as professionals working in the digital arena. So, without further ado, let's recap and set the stage, because to have any kind of shred of hope of understanding what's in the future, and even what's in the present, we need to have a really, really solid grasp of what's gone before. So, once upon a time, we had EAT, and this stood for experience, this stood for expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. Expertise being, does the author have the knowledge and qualifications to back up what they're saying? Authoritativeness being, is the site reputable within its industry? Does it have a really, really great breadth and depth of topical authority? And trustworthiness, can the website's creators be trusted to provide secure browsing for the users and correct information? Now, EAT was introduced way back in 2014, which feels like a lifetime ago now, as part of Google's quality rater guidelines. And as the name suggests, these are the guidelines that the quality raters use when assessing the overall quality, utility, relevance, and accuracy of the content that's on a web page. But EAT really gained traction in 2018 following the now infamous Medic core update. And this is an update that specifically targeted the quality, reliability, and veracity of Your Money, Your Life, YMYL content. Why? Well, in a word, safety. We know that knowledge is power, but the wrong knowledge in the wrong hands has the potential to be incredibly dangerous. Think about it this way. Would you trust somebody to take your appendix out after they'd only read a set of instructions written by an amateur? Probably not, right? But this need for protection, this need for safety, it transcends so many boundaries. It spills out way beyond the obvious fields of medicine, finance, law, into just about every other industry, because consumers, wherever they are, they need protection from scams, they need protection from incorrect information, and they need protection from harmful content, regardless of what they're searching for. And this need for protection, this need for safety, paired with kind of overall user satisfaction, is what has always sat at the heart of EAT. So, we've reminded ourselves about EAT's origin story, and apparently it's now one of Marvel's superheroes. So we're in a position to turn our attention to what it's evolved into more recently. At the end of 2022, Google added the second E to the core EAT framework, and this E stands for experience. It refers to the need for the author to demonstrate genuine lived experience in their area of expertise. Now, why did Google do this? Well, in classic SEO style, it kind of depends. For starters, we can see experience as kind of the sum of EAT's parts. By this, I mean, with lived experience, somebody's going to have a certain level of expertise, they're going to be able to speak with a certain amount of authority, and they're going to serve as a trustworthy source of information. But I think we can push it much further than this. I I think we can see the inclusion of this second E as the first unofficial action Google took against the very kind of real risk of unhelpful, unqualified content appearing on SERPs as a result of the rise of generative AI. Think about it this way. When was the last time you saw ChatGPT walking down the street into that new Italian restaurant that's opened and trying out the new menu? You haven't, right? And when was the last time you saw Bard kind of working through 5 years of university to begin practicing as a dentist? You haven't, right? Lived experience is the key differentiating factor between human and artificial intelligence. So it makes sense for Google to leverage it as the marker of high quality, trustworthy information. And actually, just this week, the Merriam-Webster dictionary announced that its word of the year for 2023 is authentic, showing how globally interest in issues surrounding trust, truth, and originality is greater now than ever before. So we understand the past, we understand the present, so now we turn to the main event. Here are some of my predictions for how the state of search is going to change in the months and years to come. And these are the things that I think people in all businesses, all industries will need to put into practice from now if they want to carry on outranking and outperforming their competition moving forward. So, prediction number 1. Taking Google's lead and kind of throwing some more letters into the EEAT framework, my first prediction is that we'll see an N added to the quality guidelines, and this N will stand for new. Now, in truth, this N could sit anywhere within the acronym. But if we put it at the beginning, it makes a word. So we're going to go with that. So, prediction number 1, neat. Similar to how we can see kind of the addition of experience to EEAT as kind of being a response to the rise of AI, we'll see a new emphasis on unique content when it comes to determining ranking potential. In the future, I see Google rewarding content that presents new, innovative ideas, shares original perspectives and experiences, and pushes existing knowledge bases further than ever before. And giving rise to this prediction is a belief that the buzzword generative AI is fundamentally misleading. It invites people to think that AI tools have the capacity to create, when in reality, all they can really do is reproduce. And as we've seen kind of across mass media, reproduce with varying levels of success. Perhaps a more appropriate title for tools like ChatGPT, like Jasper AI, like Bard, would be transformative AI. Since all they're ultimately doing is consuming, processing, and regurgitating content that already exists. And if all we ever do is rehash the same old information, how can we hope to make any progress? We can't. Regardless of the industry, regardless of the discipline, improvement and advancement come from having the courage to pursue new ideas and establish different models of thinking, not from redressing what we already know. But what's Google said about this? Well, spoiler alert, this isn't actually breaking news because Google's made its stance on kind of unoriginal, rehashed content pretty clear from the get-go. It's published successive anti-spam guidelines for creators. It's rolled out update after update, specifically targeted at spam content to weed out offending sites and pages. And when we look at the official guidelines from Google on the issue of spam, we can instantly see a common theme emerging. In the official guidance, Google says we need to be providing additional useful services, added value, original content that's of unique benefit to the user. We need to be providing substantial added value. We can't be copying content, modifying it only slightly, reproducing it from elsewhere. And this all makes perfect sense because ultimately, Google wants to protect its users from out-of-date, potentially incorrect information by returning the most relevant, helpful content possible for a given search query. And if quality raters can see that new research, original ideas, genuine human thought is being layered throughout a website's content, then this is a solid indication that these resources deserve to rank highly on SERPs. But what might this look like in practice? Well, firstly, we shouldn't be relying on AI, the likes of ChatGPT, the likes of Bard, the likes of Jasper, to write our content for us. Now, I'm not saying that AI tools don't have a place in modern businesses and their marketing functions. I think they do. For example, today we're all learning from Stacey on how AI can enhance link building efforts. But I think the ways in which we use AI, especially when there's any degree of creativity involved, need to be tempered with extreme caution. Next, we need to be utilising in-house experts, using their exclusive knowledge and insights on the topics we're covering to really provide that added weight, that credibility to what we're saying. If we don't have these in-house experts at arm's reach, we need to go out and find them. We need to find them from elsewhere and get them to contribute to our content to add that credibility. We need to be doing in-depth, regular SERP analysis to establish solid benchmarks for existing competitor content. And then ask, what can we do as a business to provide further value for searchers beyond what's already there? Providing this additional value, it's going to take putting time and effort into hyper-relevant research that sets us apart from everybody else. But of course, this is going to put a strain on our resources. So I think it may well be that the future of search, the future of SEO, is a story of quality over quantity, where creators are publishing fewer pieces of higher quality content. Of course, for smaller brands or businesses with reduced in-house capacities, outsourcing is going to be essential. Not everybody can be an expert on everything, and that's okay. Because collaboration between individuals who really, really know their stuff in a particular field is essential for upholding quality and integrity. Ultimately, we need to be delving deeper, thinking bigger, and working harder than our competitors to succeed on SERPs going forwards. And this all kind of leads on really nicely into my second prediction, whereby I think we're going to really need to be putting some effort, some hard work, some elbow grease into our content going forwards. So my second prediction number 2 for today, is that Google will add a third E to its EEAT guidelines. And this third E will stand for effort. Now, for the sake of tongue twisters, I don't see anybody kind of referring to this as EEAT. We'll start calling it triple EAT or 3EAT. But why will this be the case? Why will Google choose to put greater emphasis on clear demonstrations of effort when determining rankability? Well, there's no getting away from the fact that kind of one of the biggest draws for businesses in using AI is streamlining operations and cutting costs. But this poses a really, really big problem for Google. If businesses see the rise of AI as an opportunity to make cutbacks, to take shortcuts with their marketing functions, I think they're fundamentally and fatally misguided. When we rely on AI to automate things like content production, like image generation, like video creation, all we're really demonstrating is disinterest and laziness, neither of which relates to expertise, authoritativeness, or trustworthiness. We know that researching a topic in breadth and depth takes time, and qualifying these learnings with credible experts takes resources and effort. But in the future, SERP success will be enjoyed by the sites that recognise the importance of this, going above and beyond to exceed expectations. And what's Google said about this? Well, we know that Google's stance on what creators need to do to meet EEAT quality criteria has always been clear. And we also know that living up to these criteria isn't the quickest or the most straightforward of tasks. We know that quality raters have a near 200-page document to use when assessing sites. So meeting EEAT is not a simple tick box exercise. It's an incredibly nuanced, complex art, which is why the whole field of SEO exists. But for those of us working in SEO and in SEO content, this became a whole lot more interesting following the helpful content update in August of 2022. Now, when we saw the introduction of the helpful content updates, there was a whole new focus on the notion of providing users with a satisfying experience, creating content that provides additional added value for users. And we can see it here, again, in the official documentation from Google. We see bringing searchers additional value, creating satisfying content, leaving people feeling as though they've had a satisfying experience. But what do we mean by satisfying? Well, this has been a hot topic of discussion amongst people working in SEO in the last 12-ish months. Some brands and their SEOs see satisfying as providing the necessary information and little more. But I think we can go much further than this. When we look at the dictionary definition of satisfying, when we look at the semantics, we can see how it means so much more. It also means pleasurable, enjoyable, convincing, persuasive. Satisfying, creating satisfying content means much, much more than just meeting the minimum requirements. We need to be embracing a much more holistic approach to content creation, paying attention to how factors such as page design, UX, accessibility features, information architecture, all contribute to how satisfied our users are going to feel after consuming our content. But what might this look like in practice? Well, as a baseline, it's going to meet existing all EEAT requirements. These include first-hand experience, genuine expertise, and off-page trust signals. But beyond this, it's going to mean thinking bigger than just words on a page. Looking at overall experience, it's going to mean including original images, illustrations, diagrams, graphical representations of data to make really complex topics easier to understand and digest for our users. It's going to make creating downloadable assets such as ebooks, white papers, thought leadership articles, infographics, shareable resources that provide real added value for users. It's going to mean giving careful consideration to on-page UX, including features to enhance overall readability and scannability, such as navigation menus, information architecture best practices, and again, accessibility features. It's going to mean finding unique insights from trusted sources that crucially can't just be taken from page one of SERPs. We need to be going out and getting these off our own backs. In the future, satisfying this EEAT framework is going to mean recognising that digital content is, as I said, far, far more than just words on a web page. It's going to mean embracing a multidisciplinary approach. We're going to need to leverage a wider range of skills and expertise. Graphic designers, behavioural psychologists, storytellers, customer insights teams, web developers, technical SEO specialists, to create content that doesn't just walk the walk, doesn't just talk the talk, but that walks the walk. So, on to my third and final prediction for today. Keeping with the same 3 EAT framework, this E could also stand for environment. Now, by environment, I'm talking about the digital carbon footprint, the very real environmental impacts of search, of sharing online information, and of Google's own operations, because many people don't realise that websites all have carbon footprints, as an amount of CO2e is generated each time a user accesses a website's pages and consumes its information. Why? Well, to simplify things right down, Google's data centres use inordinate amounts of electricity. And as we know, the generation of electricity results in carbon dioxide. And I see Google's business case for putting far more of a focus on these environmental responsibilities as being threefold. Number one, we're entering an era defined by environmental crises, and an era that's led by a generation of increasingly climate-conscious consumers. More and more, we're going to see big businesses held to ever higher sustainability standards, both by their industry associates and by their target markets. And we're going to see being purpose-led becoming a prerequisite for commercial success. And we can see this kind of global rise in search volume for the keyword sustainability over the last 5 years. We can see the trend from 2019 through to today. Searches for sustainability have increased threefold, and that trajectory is set to move in an upward direction going forwards. Number two, we can't forget that Google itself is a business with ambitious profit targets and decision makers looking at things through a commercial lens. This commercial agenda is always going to be a principal focus for stakeholders. And Google is always going to be looking for ways to kind of minimize costs for itself. And number three, all of this is happening within a bigger picture where Google is actually lagging behind several of its key competitors in terms of sustainability progress and commitments. And when we look at this environmental bigger picture from between Google and its closest competitors, kind of the narrative becomes clear. I've used Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions data from recent ESG and CSR reports, and we can see that Google is lagging behind the likes of Microsoft, Meta, Apple in terms of its emissions. And this puts it at quite a significant competitive disadvantage. But for big tech companies, offsetting their carbon emissions using standard measures that kind of smaller businesses or kind of the likes of you or I might use day to day, it just isn't practical. In tangible terms, it takes 46 trees to remove 1 metric tonne of CO2e from the atmosphere. But when we look at the numbers for the Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions generated by Google, it would need to plant in the region of 304,580,352 mature trees to offset the organisation's environmental footprint. And I don't know about you, but I think that's quite a lot of trees. So how might Google achieve this in practice? Well, it's actually already set out some of how it's going to do this in its most recent environmental report. In this, it published its official stance on how it plans to work towards a greener future in the rest of the decade. And alongside investing in renewables, alongside kind of using recycled materials in its physical products, in its 2023 environmental report, Google sets out how reducing its Scope 2 emissions will be mission critical for its ongoing efforts to decarbonise. And these Scope 2 emissions, as we can see there in page 35 from the environmental report, these Scope 2 emissions are generated due to the electricity demands of its data centers. So how is Google going to reduce the electricity demands on its data centers? Well, in practice, for us working in SEO, it's going to see Google rewarding lighter websites, websites that use electricity and place smaller demands on its servers. By lighter websites, I mean streamlined sites with only the necessary pages and content. Websites with faster page speed, with optimal core web vitals. And this is going to mean investing in really robust technical SEO foundations from the get-go of any website project. It's also going to mean running fewer routine crawls. Each time Google crawls the web, it uses electricity. So fewer crawls means reduced energy consumption and reduced cost for Google too. Remember how we said that Google is a business itself with its own commercial targets to meet. And ultimately, this is going to mean recalibrating our entire approach to content creation and website management. It's going to mean recalibrating away from a just get it written and published mindset. We're going to need to evaluate sites as whole entities, recognizing that fluff, heavy pages may well impact the ranking potential of other higher quality pages, just as having kind of spammy pages on sites can impact the ranking of high quality content at present. It's going to mean putting a far, far greater focus on on-page UX to make it easier and quicker for users to find the information that they're looking for, minimizing time spent on pages. And it's going to mean putting sustainable website design principles into practice at the outset of any project. And critically, this is where this prediction kind of differs from the other two that I've already shared. I see the third E for environment being different from effort, from new content. I see it being a key determinant in a website's ranking potential. So whereas the existing EEAT framework kind of gives guidelines for Google's quality raters when assessing the quality and kind of utility and credibility of content, this third E for environment will be much more of a make or break factor. Environmental credentials will be in a similar space then to core web vitals. And they're going to give rise to a future state of search where a website's digital carbon footprint sits as a foundation stone in a wider SEO strategy. And this is because the carbon footprint, the environmental impact of a website, is a quantitative, not qualitative thing. Things like page speed, things like redundant HTML, things like overly large images. These are facts that aren't open to interpretation. This is information that's already publicly available. And if a site can't meet these clearly defined criteria, it's going to struggle to rank. So, 3 predictions, summing things up. As marketers, as SEOs, as people working in the digital arena, what do we need to remember going forwards? Number 1, you are not competing with ChatGPT. You're competing with the person using it. AI tools are only as good as the person who's using them. And people that don't understand when and when not to use them will be the victims of their own streamlining efforts. If your competitors are singing AI's praises from the rooftops right now, put more effort, put more humanity into your content, because it's going to put you in pole position as things change. Number 2, and this takeaway is inspired in part by a recent seminar led by Google's own public liaison, Danny Sullivan, in which his biggest take-home message was this. He said, if you chase the algorithm, you're behind. If you chase what people like, you're ahead of the algorithm. So my message is, Be wary of any self-titled experts who try and sell themselves as search-first writers, search-first marketers. If your in-house or agency SEOs are working to please Google, your brand and its online presence will always be one step behind. We need to stop communicating in B2B or even B2C terms and stop thinking as what we do as a means to SERP success. We need to embrace a H to H, human to human mindset and understand that we're person-first creators. We need to be putting energy into producing exceptional resources for real human users, thinking about what individuals want, need, enjoy, dislike, fear, and value. And the results are going to speak for themselves. Number 3, environmental credentials will become a factor that directly facilitates or hinders ranking potential. As the states of businesses, branding, SEO become ever more intertwined with wider sustainability challenges, Google is going to begin rewarding websites that meet certain environmental standards. It's also going to start running fewer crawls to streamline data center operations and reduce the amount of energy used by its servers, meaning we'll need to recalibrate our approach to content creation accordingly, and making content quality a priority from the outset rather than an afterthought. And number 4, upholding quality metrics, it takes effort. But if we fail to demonstrate this in our content, we'll fail to perform on SERPs. Anybody, probably even my grandma, no offense grandma, I hope you're not watching, can put a prompt into ChatGPT, get a long form response, and then copy, paste and share it as if it were their own. But where's the credibility in that? As the state of search shifts and as our access to information evolves alongside it, just putting words on a page will no longer be sufficient to rank. In the future, I see the winners being those who recognise the essentiality of putting the effort into pursuing more holistic content strategies that present information in a far wider, far broader range of formats and mediums than ever before. So, as a parting message, I'm going to leave you with this. If we want to be leading the pack, if we want to be one step ahead of the game, if we don't want to be lagging behind and chasing algorithms, we can't be responding to changes. We need to be thinking beyond the here and now, planning strategically, executing proactively. We need to position ourselves ahead of the algorithms, putting ourselves in prime position to outrank and outperform our competitors as search evolves. Thank you. I've been Ellie Wraith. Thanks very much for listening. If you're hungry to learn more about what the future kind of might hold for SEO, for PR, for the wider digital landscape, you can catch me and a whole bunch of other super speakers at next year's Digital PR Summit in person in Manchester. There's a QR code there for more information. And if you've got another question about EEAT or SEO content in general and the future of it all, hit me up on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect. Thanks very much.